Hello and welcome to another episode of the Drum Corps Coffee Shop Podcast. I'm Rob and I'm here with my good buddy George. How's it going, George?
It's good. I'm glad to be back so soon after our last episode.
Yeah. Hey, we have an awesome guest today, but before we intro him, dude, let's talk about the activity. I've slowly seen some videos online of some stuff. Did you see that Music City Mystique video?
Yeah, it's really interesting what people are doing with what they have available to them. So like Music City Mystique put out a really cool. They're doing the virtual thing, but then there are other groups like Infinity and Matrix that are doing the more in-person traditional stuff. So depending on where you are in the country, it's nice to see ensembles getting together and doing it again. Yes. And slowly, a lot of that stuff is trickling out. So
yeah, and like the Music City Mystique, I really like how their virtual part one with all the lighting that they did, and then the Matrix, I saw them, and the ramps that they had, those props, those are super cool.
Everybody should go seek that stuff out because it's starting to be more visible out there.
Yeah, speaking of seeking that stuff out, you came out with like on your YouTube channel, kind of like a short summary and links.
Basically I figured since I do it anyway, all the time because I'm a fan at heart. Like I search for indoor clips, just regular drumline clips, even from all over the world, almost every day. I put together on my YouTube channel just like a little here's what I found, go check it out. And it has links to all the different videos, and I think I'm going to keep doing that periodically as I put together like a little cluster of have a good little group to put out, because I know that not everybody is as geeky about it as I am.
Yeah, I saw the first one, and I liked the little synopsis that you put at the beginning of each clip that you're introing. So I'll try to put that as a link on when I post this on YouTube.
Oh, great.
So without further ado,
let's get into
it. So in sports, the great ones, they go by nicknames or by one name. You have Megatron in football, Calvin Johnson, wide receiver. You had Charlie Hustle in baseball, Pete Rose. You had Pele in soccer. In the marching arts, we have someone like that.
Oh, yeah.
And go ahead. You know this gentleman more than I. Go ahead.
I was thinking about how we were going to introduce our guest today, and everything I came up with was fell short. So I'm going to forego all of that and just let's welcome to the podcast Mr. Scott Johnson,
aka ScoJo.
aka ScoJo. Welcome, Scott. Welcome to the shop.
Thanks, guys. I'm happy to be here.
And we are very happy to have you here. So as we get into this, a couple questions I got to ask. The Raiders, is our defense going to step up this year? Or
we need a new defense. We need a whole new defense to step up this year. The offense is fine. I think the offense is great. The defense is a little bit of a problem. They're young. They were young last year, so we'll get a couple vets in there hopefully, and who knows,
And we need to get Derek Carr like a true number one receiver, because every time we get one, they either get injured before the season or they just fall short. So we'll see what happens, but I know people don't want to hear about football.
about an average football team. Yeah, I grew up a Raider fan, guys, just so you know.
When you get like the two Raider fans that exist in the world on the same podcast, you have to talk a little Raiders, right? I guess
we have to talk Raiders. If you were to see that new stadium, you would realize.
Scott, are you or have you, or are you going to make any treks? I guess you haven't, but are you planning on making any treks to Vegas to see them?
I'm sure I will. Nothing's planned. I mean, I had season tickets in Oakland ever since I came back from LA, so we go to the games all the time. But when they moved to Vegas, I figured I'm not going to keep my season tickets. I could have, the people who had them up in Oakland had the first rights to season tickets in Vegas, but it was just one of those things where it wasn't worth it to me to get the season tickets. But I know if I go there, there's going to be seats. If you go to Vegas,
I have a vague memory. Did you get those season tickets when I was there, like in 94, 95? Was that around the time?
Yeah, it was 95, I think, when they came, because I think they came back in 96. Yeah, they came back in 96.
Did you have to pay the PSL?
Oh boy, did I ever! Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of the PSLs,
That was a lot of money too back then. Well, it's a lot of money now too, but yeah. But we had really good seats. Yeah, we did it right.
Oh yeah, I bought a couple games from you before, and I loved your seat. I loved your seat so much that I went and I got season tickets on my own, like on the other side of the 50 from where you
Oh,
had your
really?
seats.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
So I had season tickets there for a few years, but then it just got I couldn't from making the trek from Southern California all the time. I kind of had to let them go, and then of course when I let them go, that's the year that they went to the playoffs. So, but Murphy's Law, right?
Of course.
Okay. So the other question I have is, when you're sitting there on a par 3 with a water hazard in front of you, do you tee up with it like a Titleist Pro V, or do you have separate water balls? Are you like the rest of us that carry balls specifically for the water hazards to hit over?
Strixon balls, and that's because we had a bass drummer in the Blue Devil drum line back in, oh God, I'm going to get it wrong, but I'm going to say the mid '90s, maybe no, it's probably later than that. But he's now the head of Strixon sales department in Florida, and after we won 2019, he sent me a couple of cases of Strixon golf balls, and it says the number 19 in, and then it spelled out the word 19, so it's 19 and 19. So I have my signature golf balls that he sent me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was yeah. Phil's a great guy. He played bottom bass for us, and God, I know I can't remember the year, but someone will know out there.
That's awesome. I love golf too, and they're actually a couple miles down from where I live. They're building a Top Golf. So if next time you come to Southern California, we're gonna have to go hit that up.
And I've never done that, but I've heard great things about it. And as much as I love golf, I mean, everywhere I've been, they just don't have it there. They didn't have it in the Bay Area. They don't have it where I'm at now. So, well.
Yeah, same with me. But other than that, you know what the best type of golf is, right? Free golf.
That is true.
Yeah. But when you come down south, we're gonna have to definitely hook it up and go
Sounds
play
good.
some golf.
Sounds
For
good.
our audience, if any of our audience is ever at a drum corps show or an indoor drumline show, and they're curious about where the best golf courses are nearby, go find Scott
Yes.
and ask him,
Yes.
because I'm sure he knows, no matter where we are in the country or the world, maybe.
We could do a whole episode on the golf game around indoor drumline contest.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody out there listening has any golf hookups, please send them our way.
Yeah.
There you go. Now we're talking.
So, anyways, on to the important stuff now. So, we know that you've grown up in the Blue Devils organization. You marched there in the 70s. What was your last year as a marching member? Because I think it's something different than what it actually is.
My last year marching in Blue Devils was 1979.
1979. Okay.
I aged out in the 70s. I could have marched in 80 if the rule was what it is now, that bonus year, because my birthday's in June. It's in late June, but at that time it wasn't, which was a good thing. I mean, I aged out in 79. But I marched in a smaller drum corps for many years before Blue Devils too, so that wasn't my first group when I marched.
I was close. I thought it was like 1980. So it's 79.
Yeah, 79.
Okay. Nowadays, I don't think you see it so much, but were the rivalries was there real intense rivalries in the 70s as like I picture?
Much more intense than today. And the reason is, I mean, today, because of the internet, because of, we didn't have cell phones back then. You didn't have a camera on your phone. You didn't have any of that stuff. And that was your competition. I mean, it was always the Blue Devils Vanguard, where I grew up. I grew up in a town called Hayward, and the organization that I marched with, it was literally 30 miles from Santa Clara and 30 miles from Concord. We're right in the middle. So it was like, which way are you going to go? But it was intense. The drummers, I think, got along better than anybody else, to be honest, just because we all like to drum. But this is before indoor drum lines. Now there's so many crossovers of guys who march together in indoor lines that are now during the summer, which I think is extremely healthy. I think it's awesome, But so the rivalries, I think the alumni has more rivalries than the actual members do, to be honest. From what I hear from all my friends who I march with, how come they're beating you again? What's going on? I go, whoa, chill, relax. It's all good.
So why the Blue Devils?
That's okay. Is this where we're going to
Do
start?
you remember?
Oh, absolutely. I remember completely.
Let's go.
I marched in a drum corps called the Royal Airs in the early 70s, taught by a gentleman named Bob Kalkoffen, who was the mentor for the Santa Clara Vanguard drum line in the 70s. And also by a guy named Ron Mokler, who I still see today, by the way. He still shows up at drum corps shows, who marched with Bob in the Troopers before Bob went on to Santa Clara. So Ron came out to California, was our main instructor. And we ended up merging with the Stockton Commodores in 1974 because we were too small, they were too small. So we're going to make this power corps, take it to DCI. It was my first time in DCI. Was in 1974 with the drum corps. DCI started in 72, as most of us know. But so the first year I was there was 1974, and we took 13th. We didn't make finals. The Royal Commodores did not make finals. So the next year they folded. They couldn't do it financially. It was over. So 75 rolls around, and Bob Kalkofen got a hold of me and said, "Come on." So I think Mom drove me to Santa Clara rehearsal in 1975, and I was at the first couple of rehearsals with them. And my dad decided to build a family room on that year, and he goes, "Hey, what are the chances of you staying home this summer?" Because every summer I was gone since I was like a kid, 5 years old. I was doing something drum corps related. And I go, "Why?" And he goes, "I really need your help this summer. We're going to do this family room, and I think this would be a good year to do it." And so I didn't do drum corps in 75. I didn't do Santa Clara, which to me is still one of the best drum lines ever in my book. If you haven't checked out the recordings, it's that separated clarity for that time especially. But I didn't march in Santa Clara in 75. And all my friends that I marched with in the smaller drum corps, the Royal Airs in the early 70s, most of them went to Blue Devils in 1975. So 76 rolls around, and I was going to go to Santa Clara. I mean, I was pretty much already in, but I couldn't do the summer until all my friends are going, "You can't handle the pressure. Blue Devils are up and rising," and they were just literally giving me crap. So to shut them up, I'm going, "All right, let's go. I'll go with you guys. Let's go." And I grew up with these guys, so they were my buds, they were my brothers. And so I went to Blue Devils in 76. So it's crazy. You think about those life decisions where if we didn't build a family room on, I could have been at Santa Clara forever. I could have not continued teaching, I mean, who knows, right? It's crazy. I wouldn't have met my wife possibly.
What was it like being a Blue Devil then? Like the first championship ever, the first drum title ever.
Yeah.
I think most people have a good picture of like the float years on identity wise as far as like, but that period, your period before that, what was it like being in the Corps?
Those traditional Blue Devil uniforms was 76.
Yeah, that's the first year we got them. Yeah,
the open front end.
Yep.
Yeah,
that was the first year we got the cadet style jackets. Matter of fact, that first tour, the uniforms weren't even in yet, so we had light blue button collared shirts that we did a first tour in. And back then, when you would do a first tour and a second tour, first tour was usually LA, Oregon, Washington. You come home for 2 to 3 weeks, and you did the national tour back in the day. But we didn't have the uniforms till the second tour. The drum staff was Rick Odello and Ron Mickey. That was it. 2 people. They ran the entire percussion section, and it was always a real small staff. I mean, 1 or 2 horn people, 1 or 2 visual people, 1 or 2 color guard people, two percussion people. That was the entire staff back in those days. Now it's the snare techs, right? It's that many people for just the snare line. But it was very different. It was very local. Everybody lived close by. We did it. I mean, rehearsals back then. And I think you guys talked about this, I'm sure, with some other people already. But we did 2 days starting in October, 2 nights a week and a Sunday. So you rehearsed all season, all year long for August. And you take a month off or so, and then you come back and you start over. So everybody knew everybody. Everybody lived close by. So you were just, I'm still friends with all those guys from the 76 line more than I am from all the decades after that, just because of what we went through and because of that. We really didn't know, I don't think, how good we were because I never did a big drum corps before other than, my 13th place corps before that. I watched a lot of lines. I remember watching Santa Clara, all of 75. I went to some shows and watched the drum lines and I'm going, God, this is what I really want to do. This is it. I want to do this. I got to do this. And I didn't know we were actually becoming that until we're getting close to DCI. And have we lost? Yeah, I think we lost 1 prelim show. We're going, wow, we got a shot at this. We got a shot, and we were pretty happy. It was the first year with 10 snares. We had 10 snares that year. It's the first year. Usually no one ever had 10 snares yet, and that's when the term the wall actually was created for the snare line. We were called the wall.
Oh, really? For that year?
My Blue Devil jacket has the wall on it that I had made in 76. That's what it says, the wall. And it says the Blue Crew on the back because I thought Blue Devils was a weird name because I grew up hating them. So I put Blue Crew, CREW, on the back of my jacket. So yeah, no, the early days, man, it's we rehearsed all year long, 2 nights a week and a Sunday every week.
And Odello was there until when?
Rick Odello was the caption head. Before I got there, he was the caption head 74, 75. I got there 76. He was the caption head 76, 77. 78 was his last year. And then the last couple weeks of 78, he brought in Bob Kalkofen. And Rick's whole thing, and we won 76 and 77. We won the core and we won drums. And we weren't having a good year in 78. But a lot of guys aged out finally. There was just 3 of us left in the snare line from the glory days. And so we had a lot of new blood in there. And it just wasn't as good as it could have been. So Rick, I don't want to say he panicked, but he hired Bob Kalkofen to come in literally the last 3 weeks of the tour. And his whole reasoning was, I don't know how to win it 3 years in a row, but he does. So we're going to get this guy. So Bob came on, and I knew Bob from when I was 12 years old. He wrote my first snare solo for me in this other small drum corps, So it was like, all right, Bob's here. All right, cool, I know Bob, So he took over, and he was the caption head in 79.
Okay.
He took over for Rick. Rick's last year was 78. But an interesting thing about that era, 78, our snare tech, who was with us in 76 and 77, Steve Corsi, phenomenal drummer. He came from the Troopers, and then he also marched in Santa Clara in the 74, 75 line. He was like the most muscled guy I know that could play faster than anything you've ever seen. And he was our snare tech. So I learned so much from him in 76 and 77. And then right before tour in 78, something came up and he bailed. He had to leave us. So, and back then, you didn't come in for a week and go out for a week. You were every day, right? Staff, you were there every day. And I will say, in a panic, Jerry Seawright, the director for the Blue Devils, we didn't have a snare tech. So Jerry hires me. I'm in the snare line. He hires me to be the snare tech along with my best man at my wedding, Terry Shellberg, who is also in the snare line. He hired us to teach the line from inside the line, which meant we're doing the same thing we always did, but now we're getting paid. So I got paid a monthly check in 78 and 79, my last 2 years as a membership with Blue Devils. That was pretty cool. I was a professional snare drummer.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was possible. I thought it was like NCAA rules that if you're a marching member, you can't get paid.
Well, if there were rules, I didn't know them either.
Now, in the 70s, you guys win in 76. Was there already that Blue Devil swagger? Was it already there, or did it start, building after that year? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it started halfway through the 76 season when we started to realize, hey, we could be really good. It was so crazy back then. Whenever we would do a run through, and this shows you why everybody hated the snare line, and still probably does hate snare lines every now and then. We were treated differently than everybody else. And what I mean by that is Rick Odello would pull one snare drummer out of the line at a time to watch the run through up in the stands, just so we can see how cool this thing was, right? He never did it for the tenors, never did it for the basses, never did it for the marching timpani, never did it for the cymbals, never did it for the sopranos or the horn, but the snare line, Scott, come here, man, you got to check out this run through. So I got to go sit upstairs as a 16-year-old marching member going, all right, this is cool.
Scott, I'm gonna admit this, but there were times when you were there when I marched that I broke my head on purpose just so I could change it and watch the run through. Just so I could sit up front and do that.
I know. You weren't alone.
Oh, that's too funny.
That's awesome.
I lost my train of thought there for a second. Maybe.
Oh, you were asking about 78. We won 76. We won 77. There was better drum corps. There was better drum corps that year. That wasn't that 10th, 10th, 10th for a second, third. I think the final placement, it was a 10th, a 10th, and a 10th. Santa Clara, Phantom, us maybe, I think, right?
I saw a video from that 78 retreat, and it was like Phantom and Vanguard back and forth. And then at the end, when they announced Vanguard wins in 78, this is something that, we didn't see in my era. You just see all the Vanguard guys going nuts during retreat, because usually it used to be regimented. And now, if you go look at the video, they're like, I don't know, just kind of going crazy. But that's cool. They work so hard.
We never stood still. The first time we won in 76, I remember the Corps going nuts. And I don't know if that was done before that by anybody else, but, we were the jazz kids, right? We had the long hair and the earrings, and we could be cool. And so everybody went absolutely freaked out.
Well, and see, that's the interesting stuff, because Blue Devils has such a strong identity, and they've had it for a really long time. But how that comes to pass, how that forms is it's a combination of a bunch of different things. And it's really interesting to hear that started in the 70s with you guys. I mean, you guys were creating it. You guys weren't thinking about creating it, but
No,
you
of
were.
course. Right.
You talked about you and Terry sort of being player coaches, but then you moved on to actually being staff members, right? And running the line. How many years did you guys do that?
Well, 78, 79, we were marching in the line. The best thing about that is back then all the corps had to do retreat. So after the show, all the corps would go line up and go back onto the field for the award ceremony, right? Not Terry and I. We got to go to the bus, get changed, to go do critique and talk to the judges. So we got to be pretty good friends with the judges. The 2 years we were marching. I mean, even to the point where the last year in 79, my age out year, we're on the field in Allentown, Pennsylvania, and Cosmo, who was a drum judge at the time, walks up and he goes, "You're still marching?" And I go, "Yep, stand here the whole damn show. Let's go. I want you to stand right here the whole show." So we had this rapport with the judges that we could actually talk with them and bullshit with them and have a good time. But Terry and I, we took over in 79. In 80. After the 79 season, Bob left. And so the weird thing about that is 80, 81, those 2 years, the drum staff was all guys who aged out in 79. There's 4 of us. Terry and myself, a guy named Scott Kent, who was kind of the tenor guy, and then Tom Nanny, who was our pit instructor at the time for our 2 keyboards that we had that turned into 4 keyboards back then. And that was it. And so here's 4 22-year-olds with, a defending champion drum corps trying to win a title. And we did in 80. We won the title. The drum line was rough. 81, it was a little bit rougher. Terry was the main writer. We all got our little licks in there, but Terry was the main composer, arranger. And if you listen to that 81 show, for its time, it was so outside the box. We didn't know how to clean it. I had no concept on how to clean it. We tried everything, and we were too proud to change things a lot, like nowadays happens. So you're going with the guys, have fun, and it was pretty rough. It was pretty dirty. I think we were, I want to say 8th or 9th in drums in 81. I don't know. Somebody knows out there, and then 82, we're getting ready for the season to start up, and this is still back when we're still going twice a week on a Sunday, right? So September, October, you start getting stuff together and getting ready for rehearsals. Jerry Seawright calls and he goes, "Hey, I'd like you to come over for a meeting," And I go, "Yeah, sure." Jerry Seawright was the director. And I walk in and there's Tom Float. And Tom Float's there. And I knew Tom from Spirit,
Right. You knew who he was.
Just from drum corps. I mean, we didn't hang out that much. Back then you couldn't. You didn't know, no internet, no phones, whatever. So, you see him during the summer. "Oh, that's that tall drum guy. Yeah, they're really good. Spirit was good. Etobicoke Crusaders, yeah, they were really good, because he taught him one of the years, 77, when we competed against him. So I knew Tom. I knew of him, and we didn't really know each other that well. But I'm going, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And Jerry goes, "Oh, I think he could help us out." And that was a real interesting couple days because Tom was here for a couple days, and I was a snare tech, through all those years. And then Tom shows up, and the original plan was Terry was still going to write, and Tom was going to fix some of the stuff to be cleaned easier. And so me and Tom were talking, and I go, "Well, hey man, welcome to the team. Looking forward to it." And he goes, "So, what's up, man? I'm the snare guy." And I go, "I'm the snare guy." And he goes, "Well, we should get some sticks and go around the corner and drum." And I go, "Absolutely, we should." So we did. We got a couple.
Is there video of that?
Oh man, I've never even heard this.
No, there's no video of that. Not too many people know the story. So we literally went around the corner and just started drumming. And I did individuals every year. I did drum corps. I had really fast hands, and I still try to drum every now and then. But what was really fascinating to me, Tom was a friggin' drum machine. I mean, the way he placed in a 32nd note compared to the 16th note, compared to the 8th note, compared to the, that whole philosophy of vertical alignment was new to me. We were teaching by repetition. Do it again. I think that diddles early. Try to change that, instead of, no, put it to a check pattern. Let's put it to a grid. We never did that before Tom showed up. Tom brought math to the Blue Devil drum line. Yeah, he brought the math to us. And all of a sudden, the weird thing was the first couple camps we show up and Tom has redone the music without telling Terry. and hands it to the guys. And Terry left. He bailed. He quit. He goes, this isn't music, and he got pissed off and left. Meanwhile, the drum line was cleaner than it's ever been. And we got a lot of horses from Spirit of Atlanta, where Tom taught before that. A lot of guys came over from Spirit to join that drum line. So we had his influence. We had his veterans along with the Blue Devil vets, and that started the Tom era with us.
You talk about Float and the way his mind works as far as the math and all that stuff. I'm a float guy. I marched with him for 3 years, and I remember he'd take the simplest exercise, like we would do 16-note timing, like dig it at, 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 just
Yep.
moving the rest.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, cool. But then he would change it up, like, all right, diddle sticking, alternate sticking, just something
Yep.
to get the mind working different. Yeah. And then you realize how all the timing actually fits in there. So
Without changing the interpretation. That's the important thing. Without changing the interpretation.
I think kids today don't even realize that thinking of things as like a system, and a progression and the math and all of that stuff, that is the foundation for a lot of stuff today. Kids don't realize that a lot of that, was Tom's innovation.
Well, to me, the biggest thing that the kids know today that relates to Tom is the word grid. I mean, Tom, when he first, he was at this meeting for the weekend or whatever it was, and he flew back to Atlanta, where he was living, packed up his stuff, and came out to California. And he lived with me for like the first 4 or 5 months because he didn't have a place yet. And I had a bachelor pad. It was just me at this house. So it was Tom and I. And he brings out this very old, well, it wasn't old then, but a computer generated graph of accents, diddles, grace notes, and it was the grid. And I'm going, what is that? And he's going, well, check it out. If you just play the same pattern over and over and over by moving the accent, by moving the diddle, then you insert that instead of the grace note. But what I realized in looking at this thing, I mean, this was the beginning of the grid. This was the grid that he's already done, and now I'm seeing it. I don't know if I was the first person to see. I don't know if he did it with the Spirit of Atlanta. I'm not really sure. But to see it on paper, everything was vertically aligned. From the 8th notes to 16th notes to 32nd notes to sextuplets to triplets to you name it. And it was like, oh, this is how we're going to get clean. So him and I, we just sit on my coffee table and drum forever all the time back when he lived with me.
you talk about that grid being written down, the original one. I picture that's like in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction when they open it up and there's that golden glow. It's like that's the original, Float's grid. That's what's so important to get their hands on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one of the things I had thought about coming into this discussion was what it must have been like to be a Blue Devil, be responsible for what the Blue Devils were before Float got there, and then having him come in. And it's actually really interesting to hear that you guys had to live together, and I mean, I'm sure you weren't hard to get along with, but I also know you're competitive, and all of that stuff. And also your friend, Terry, didn't have the best time with it. What was that like,
Well, Terry, like I said, he quit the first camp when he realized the music wasn't what, because back then you played the same songs year after year. You do a show 2 years in a row and it wasn't a big deal, right? And we were doing a lot of the same music from 81 that we're doing in 82, and Tom took it and floatized it, or whatever you want to call it, and changed. It was still the same chart, same whatever, same snare feature, tenor features, but it was all definitely redone to be able to be played clean. More metrically lined up, I guess you could say. I was glad that I stuck around. As far as like the history of Blue Devils, if you want to look at it that way, as far as that 70 group, into the 80s now. Because if I would have left too, when Terry left,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what, it would have been a whole different thing. It would have been the Spirit of Atlanta's drum line, probably the guys that came
Right.
over, because that's what Tom was doing. So I still had that Blue Devil influence, character, swagger, whatever you want to call it, that when Tom was there. To me, one of the fun things, and if you listen to the recordings of like 1982, when Tom said, "I'm doing the snare line," he goes, "I'm the snare guy," and I realized with the math the way he drummed, I'm going, okay, yes, you need to do the snares. I go, but I'm doing the tenors, and I go, and I want a snare book on one line, and I moved it around the drums that year. So the 82 tenor
Mm-hmm.
book was literally written as a snare part that accompanied the snare line, right? And I go, and I want flams, I want flam drags, I want flam taps. And back then, tenors didn't play that, and we had these 5 studs in the tenor line that year. Glenn Crosby was one of them, and
Yep.
we literally, I mean, I spent hours moving stuff around drums in a different way to play flam patterns on tenors. And that was the first year people started scraping diddles and all that stuff that the guys in the line kind of came up with. So, but that line, I think that tenor line started a lot of amazing tenor lines after that I was associated with. Not because of me so much, just because that era happened, and Tom showed up, and and I was a snare guy now teaching tenors, so I wanted the beef.
Was 82's? That's the original Q5, correct?
That's correct. Very good. Yes, that's the
Yeah.
original Q5.
Yeah, the original Q5.